So you want to know how I know what I know and how I make all the connection between different parts of the body? This is how. Let me just show you just an example of a typical Monday for me. These are just example of some of the papers I read on a daily basis. I'm combing through literature and recent papers, basically seeing what has been done and what needs to be still connected. And that's what I do. And not just read, I take it to the practice. So some of the most interesting reads that I have done lately are, let me just give you some examples. It's my favorite one. This is just the craniocervical instability 101, talking about how the way that your head is buckled to your cervical spine controls your neurology. The other one is talking about the orientation of your vestibular system, your ear canals, and relationship to your sleep and lymphatic movements and orientation in three-dimensional space, and how the posture of your body is all connected to the rest of them. And then I have the actual posture and breathing. This is like about a half an inch. And some of my favorite recent books, if you guys have not read and maybe talked about it, The Endless Fascia, The Endless Web from, I don't know, is a PhD, the writer, but some chiropractic books that I read. So this is pretty much how I do what I do. And I thought, you know what? Was debating whether or not I want to sort of get everyone into my world of nerdiness, in essence. And some of the stuff that I see in patients, I literally read them and I notice them. In clinic the next day, I see that there is all these correlations that I've already seen in the literature. It's already in existence, but why are we not seeing them? So let me tell you, the reason why doctors are not seeing the things they're not seeing, because people come to us with 1, 2, or 3 symptoms, and those are areas where your body starts to compensate, kind of lost ability to keep up with the compensation. Okay, normal people don't come see me. If they can compensate, they don't come see me. They come see me and my group and my team in one of 2 situations, when they're either pathological or dysfunctional. What's a pathology and what's a dysfunction? Dysfunction is someone who's out of order but still able to propel through space at a very costly rate, neurologically, orthopedically, mentally, and all of that is draining energy and voltage. The ones that are pathological, they can't do that. So every time that you're adding a new metric to their system, every time you add a new treatment or a modality, their body and brain has to refigure everything. Nervous system at any point in time is trying to compensate. So the pathological ones, they can't. So that's why I'm reading papers all day when I'm not in the clinic to understand why and how. And believe me, you guys, I was actually reading through one of the binders from the time I was in dental school and read through the anatomy and physiology, and all those things were just kind of pounded in our head in 3 months, and then we spit it on paper. What made us doctors, because we actually memorized things and put them on paper. I actually did not heal anyone when I was in mainstream training, and even after that, until I actually learned to go and apply the knowledge of how the body works into the system and learn that actually body functions in a compensatory manner in a real world that is hostile for our nervous system, mentally, chemically, physically. And the best way that I can help patients is by giving them the means to regulate their body and attend to their nervous system and talk about the mental, emotional aspect that nobody else does. Does midline shift due to the uneven extraction during orthodontic treatment cause body imbalance? Yes, it does. Actually, it does. So for those who are interested to understand the relationship, I'm going to actually, let's see if I can use my tripod here. I'm going to simulate that because that might be helpful for some. And guys, my battery is on practically 20%. So I'll see how long this live would last. Okay. So, oops. Now, very high tech today. Here we go. Okay, perfect. I think we're good. Awesome. We're not. Okay. Sorry about the delay here. So as I'm standing over here, my feet on the ground and my head here, okay? My head is supported by my 2 feet. So no matter where I go, I'm stuck between those 2 boundaries. So if your mouth is uneven like this, or you have one tooth missing from one side, my entire body underneath has to organize to that. Meaning, if I have an uneven head, and I have an uneven shoulder, and I have an uneven posture. And if this is how I'm stuck when I need to propel through space, which is what we do as humans, walk, breathe, stand on 2 feet, now my body doesn't have to shift to the other side. And if it cannot do that, then it has to take a compensation. I hope this makes sense. So yes, if you have an unevenness and if you have an uneven posture in your mouth, you have an uneven spine, uneven feet, uneven everything underneath. So I wasn't really planning a lot learning about this. I know, trust me, it was addictive when I started to learn, and it was really cool to. If anybody want to join me, I have just a few more minutes to do this live. If anybody want to join me and ask questions, I'd love to make this a little bit interactive and see if there's any particular questions I can answer. But I promise I'm going to do another live probably tomorrow afternoon. I'll be more prepared. And if you have any specific questions, just send a DM to me and I'll make sure to address that. And I want to show you guys some of the before and after pictures of some of the patients. I haven't gotten around to that because clearly this is why I thought it's appropriate for me to do this one live and show you guys. I'm not lazy not seeing patients. I'm not lazy not getting on my social media. I'm literally just busy doing what I do best, which is research, connecting the dots, and find out what the best possible route and modalities are to help people. So if you have any specific questions that you want me to answer, because I know you guys have been sending them through my DM, just put it down here so I can compile that list, and tomorrow I'll be coming a lot more prepared with more material that I can present so I can answer some of you guys' specific questions. All right. Thank you those that just came in. I was trying to make sure there's no other questions I did not catch. So I guess these are not my reading glasses. They're just my far side glasses. Oh, and also my little update on my corrective glasses that I've been using. These have been super helpful in getting my eye muscles to focus and work harder to coordinate. And one other thing that I added to that, let me just get this to stop moving. One of the things I added to that is eye movements with the tongue function. So just bear with me on this one. Okay. So when you're looking to the left and right, the bone that actually controls the movement of your eyes is called sphenoid. Sphenoid is right behind your eyes, and all the nervous structures and muscles that are controlling your eye movement are traversing through that. So by putting your tongue on the roof like this and doing a little suction tap and tap, you see how I make that tap? As you're moving your eyes, that actually is a good exercise in coordinating the eye movements with the palate. So watch me. Looking to the left and looking to the right, even diagonal, and holding your tongue suction. I'm doing a tap. Try that. These guys have been super helpful in getting some of the corrections. So these are my glasses from 6 years ago that I'm able actually to wear. So that says a lot about this. How do you know if they are compensating? Well, that's a great question. I'm so glad you asked that. If you've heard me talk about nervous system, I'm going to be in my clinic this Thursday. I will do another live in the clinic talking just about the new metrics that I'm using for evaluating the nervous system. 2 things that I use is a machine called pseudomotor heart check. Heart check is a pseudomotor nervous system testing. So we basically use blood pressure cuffs on hands and feet, and also a pad that goes onto the sole of your foot, and it measures the sweat gland functions, which is directly related to the function of autonomics. So it gives us up to 20 biomarkers of heart rate variability and nervous system function. So it gives me a full report where the patient is stuck and what their nervous system is doing. Basically, it gives a very full, detailed report according to the biological metrics. Also, I look at the posture. I do kinesio testing. Applied kinesiology is number one thing. This is my hand. Also, I use real-time feedback with the end-tidal CO2. And patient report and history is important, facial features. So we take a whole entirety of the body and put that together to come up with the diagnostic. And another thing I use that I've been employing, again, vestibular system and temporal bones are huge in what I do. is using a metrics that my new chiropractor, Dr. Ryan, you guys have seen him, uses to see how body orients itself in 3D and what part of the vestibular system is not firing. So let's say your head is stuck here. Okay, if you have a subluxation, just turn this off. If you have a subluxation and your atlas is keeping your head over here, so the temporal bones are off, guess what? That's how your temporal bones have adapted to moving you through three-dimensional space, which means neuroplastically, your body's not taking advantage of the sensory information from all parts of your vestibular system. To turn those on and to get the cerebellum right and left to work together, he gives them exercises that are particular for that patient. And there's so many different areas that he looks at because ocular and vestibular reflex are one of the major reflexes for buckling your head to your neck as you walk and propel as a bipedal species. So if your vestibular system is not orienting you properly, it doesn't matter how much I change the structure. We've got to get the neurology on board. So that's how I know. I have a midline shift, pain in several areas in my body on the same side. So you guys, I want to know that you have you all here. Let me tell you, we're actually planning to have a webinar that you can sign up for. That way you can come in with your specific questions, and I cannot tell you that what I would do about it until you become a patient, but I can give you a pretty close idea. And also, I want to make myself available to those people that want to learn more about their body, the connectivity of it. And if you want to present your own case, we can work through that just so that I can generally evaluate you. But as a doctor licensed in Colorado, I cannot give specific information about any patient outside of Colorado. I consult with doctors, that I can do. So if you have a doctor that you work with that I can consult with, that I can do. And also I'm trying to train more dentists to understand what I do so that I can spread the joy. What office do you working? Okay, so I am in Highlands Ranch, Colorado at the moment. That's where I see patients. And also I have 2 other doctors that I train, really 3, but 2 that are actively seeing patients for me in San Francisco and Dallas. So, and also in the Middle East, but I'm not going to be personally in the Middle East for probably another few months. Some of the patients that I need to see, they still have to go through other doctors that would not be seeing me. Sounds good. Okay. Keep your eyes peeled. The webinar is going to be announced right here on my page. If you follow my page, you're probably going to get those notifications. That's fun because my battery was out, but it's going to keep being up. Awesomeness. So you guys, yes, midline shift is the #1 reason. Actually, now that we're at it, let me just go ahead and, again, now that my battery is keeping up with me, let me just get you guys with my skull. I was still not prepared for this live today. Okay. But we're going to make the best of it, right? Okay. Here we go. I love this part because here's the face and here's the skull. Feather and the rock. Okay. And what's really interesting is that lower jaw, as it connects the mouth and the cranium and everything, lower jaw is really not a part of the whole entire structure until the teeth come in. So the mouth becomes a part of the skull once our teeth erupt into position. So take this. This is where majority of our breathing happens. This is where the tongue comes into the picture. This is the driver of our breathing. But this is the motherboard that controls it. Okay? So when I'm looking at sphenoid that I was talking about earlier, here's your sphenoid. See all these conduits of nerves, and this is the nasal breathing part that happens. All of those is controlled by this bone. So think about this bone, sphenoid, from which your mandible is swinging as the balancer that you use to hang artwork on your wall. So if your artwork is not balanced, it's because this is not balanced. So if you use the floors as a reference, and if your artwork is not balancing to the floor and your floor is off, so your artwork is off too, right? So when you're standing on 2 feet that is uneven, a pelvis that's uneven, your head is going to be uneven too, so is this guy. But if there's a structural imbalances between sphenoid, occiput, head, all these structures, and tongue following that, if the major driver was in your skull when you were born, then your body maladapted to that. So not only you have an uneven body, but you have an uneven face. Which one was the driver? At this point, it's both top to bottom and bottom to top. It doesn't matter where it started. It's now both. The only difference for me is which one do I need to address first, and do I need to co-treat with other people? Because every time a dentist comes in between the two, upper and lower jaw, and changes this harmony, the body has to reorganize itself underneath of that. So think about this. Your mouth is an extension of your body. Before we are grown, like 12 to 14 years old, when all the teeth transition into adulthood, your body is controlling the mouth. But once the mouth is done forming, now your entire system is stuck in that distortion that formed the mouth. So when dentists start doing dentistries and orthodontics or orthopedics or whatever, whether it's DNA, it's ALF, doesn't matter, the body will start to mobilize that distorted pathological occlusion, which means now we have to find a place to land them. Otherwise, the body kind of constantly is going to organize itself under that new position. If they were pathological, they're not going to find a good position to land into. If they were dysfunctional, they have a leeway to adapt and maladapt. I don't like to guess, which is why I run so many metrics. I work with so many doctors to see where the compensation started, where did it set up shop, and why are they still compensating? Does the midline shift? I want to make sure that this all makes sense and nobody had a question about it as I was talking. Okay, cool. Now sphenoid looks exactly like the back of the pelvis. Yeah, well, if you think about it, whoever proposed the question or comment, I guess, this bone, your occiput, literally, it's the shape of the tailbone. There's a coupling between, like, this is the mirror image of your tailbone. This is the occiput. Occiput is connected to the sphenoid. And this right here is where majority, like practically everything that is making you human. What makes us human? Standing on 2 feet. We think, we formulate thoughts, brainwaves, and we speak on 2 feet. Let that sink. As a matter of fact, I was at YMCA with my daughter and her classmates last week, and they had skulls of other primates. I'm going to say it was elk, some other animals. Their skull, their brains is small, and their faces are long, obviously. And their occipital condyles were back here, not here, because they have a tailbone, they're more horizontal, their ventral surface is closer to the ground, okay? But think about this. As humans, we stand on 2 feet, which means our occipital condyles have to support us in a vertical direction. That means our airway is going to get a 90-degree sharp or kind of less than 90-degree sharp angle here to accommodate that. And we have to speak with that. So that means there's a lot of changes that need to happen with the musculature in our airway as we stand on 2 feet. What animals have that we don't have, they can support their spine on 4 hands or feet, 4 appendices. Is that right? You guys know English is my second language. So they are not on 2 like humans. They're on 4, and they have a long tail. Their tailbone is not tucked under. So where their tail goes has no bearing on where their head is in terms of their breathing. For that matter, their jaw joint does not need to translate. So you see how the jaw joint, we open, and then our jaw joint goes into a slope and open up. They don't need that either, because their airway is independent of where their spine is related to their tailbone. We as humans, because we need to speak and we need to stand on 2 feet, we have to accommodate a lot of those structural changes that need to happen early on, and that requires neurosensory stimulations that we're not getting. What are some of those neurosensory stimulations? Well, let's talk about a few of them. Sensation of the ground with our feet, movement of the toes, releasing the extension in the neck. So when I look at humans that are standing up as if they're on 4, their neck has an extension like this. Well, that extension to turn into a neutral position, primary and secondary curve in the spine so that they can accommodate to walking. Animals do not need to walk on 2. They're on 4. And I looked at their nasal aperture over here. It's a lot different than humans. And I would not normally look at that, but knowing what I do and looking at human skulls all day long, I understand that. So what I really noticed in majority of the architectural stuff that I'm not seeing is humanity needs ground, needs sensory stimulation. Our babies need proper grounds to walk on, proper food to chew on, articulation and speech. They need to be out of car seats. They need to be on the ground. They need to get primary reflexes integrated, all of which are missing. What wave help HRV? What Vivos? Will Vivos help HRV? Well, yes, actually, believe it or not, one of the metrics that I'm using with the heart check is heart rate variability. And a lot of my patients monitor their own heart rate variability at home. So one of the metrics that we track down immediately after I insert appliances in the patient's mouth is heart rate variability, and it gives you the voltage, like totality of where the nervous system is functioning. The report is very, very sophisticated. As a matter of fact, I'll make a point to do another live on Thursday to just go over that, because this metric, the new metric that I added to my list of diagnostics, tells us immediately after insertion of the appliance. Sometimes just putting it in without activation, it moves the heart rate variability into the right direction. So somebody agreed with me. I'm saying something that you will, this. Okay, just reading through you guys' question. Oh, sphenoid looks exactly like the back of the pelvis. I think I read that. Okay, you guys, so far somebody wanted to join. Okay. I hope that my battery doesn't run out. Do I have somebody else that want to join? Accept. Okay. Is the doctor still here that wanted to join me? If not, let me know if there's any other questions you guys may have. Okay. Awesome. I hope that every time I whoop up my skull, I tell you guys a little bit more, and I'm trying to crank through. I have not even given you guys a tour of the lymphatic drainage on the brain and how all this structures and the orientation of them will be different. So Clevenger had his nose got smaller and more straight after Vivos. How does that? Okay, are you talking about Stephen? So yes, I have. I'm really not tech friendly. Otherwise, I'll just show you guys on my. Actually, I might be able to. Just give me a second. I might be able to real quick pull up the picture on my computer and show you. Documents. Guys, I was not prepared at all for doing this live today. So bear with me. It was just busy reading papers all day today. So I'm gonna go ahead and, well, I wanna just start with my own daughter. So here's my daughter before and after, okay? So take a look at the midlines, take a look at the eyes, leveling of the eyes, position of the mouth to the neck, and more importantly, take a look at ears and chin, okay? This was a contortion in the skull, and the symmetry of the face and orientation, everything changed after treatment. So this is how she slept every night, and this is her now. So mouth breathing is in disorientation in all of the airway function, not just the tongue position and just retroglossal space. It's brain chemistry and everything. Yes, thank you. Please do join me at the next live. I actually want to do a webinar showing you guys all these cases, answering questions better. I haven't gotten around to that because time is just the limited factor in my life. So let me just go to the picture of the patient you guys asked about. And yeah, Stephen. So I don't think you guys have seen this picture. This is my very first patient that I have treated myself with the Vivos. This was my 2020 patient. As you guys can see, she's wearing the mask. This is her before, mid-treatment, and final. If you guys can see, neck improvement, orientation of the eyes and nose, and jawline, orientation of the shoulders to the head, vestibular alignment with the feet, just about everything. So if you take a look at the way that she's holding her hands, we'll talk about the, how she's organizing her body properly. And this is the mouth changes. Again, I need to show you guys a lot more of that because I've done hundreds of these. And every single time, the patient with this is the dimension of the mouth that matches the neck and everything else. And look, when the body is straight, there's no orthodontics other than Vivos and orthopedic appliance. Look at what happens to the mouth, okay? Take a look at position of the lower jaw and look at the arch development. You guys like that? Awesome. And take a look at the lower teeth. So one article that I actually pulled up, I've read it before. You guys ask about it. Lower teeth crowding. Okay, with age we say, I used to, when I was a dentist, people asked me about crowding in the lower teeth and say, oh, I just want to get this straight. Wait. That's upper cervical, that has a relationship to the upper cervical. So the paper actually came out, and this is 10 years ago, it's like 16 years ago when I came out of dental school, that showed lower anterior crowding related to upper cervical instability or dysfunction in the neck. And so let me show you guys, I don't know if you guys knew, but I have treated Shaq O'Neal, and I have a picture here to show you guys. Let me just go ahead and put that on. Okay, live. So that's when I treated Shaq in 2020, 2023. That's his changes, the lymphatic function movement. To come never being prayed. Oh, you know, the doctor asked why did they not teach us that in dental school? I asked the same question. You know, honestly, this is why I'm full-time devoting my career to till my face is blue, talking about breathing, airway, cranial posture, lymphatics, dora, what have you, because nobody else, I mean, there are a few, I'm not saying there's nobody else, I'm not the only one, but to this degree invested in making my profession better. So here's another young lady, before and after. You see how much the improvement of the lymphatics will change the structure and everything. And these are the changes in the mouth. So this was her mouth after 2 rounds of orthodontics. She ended up with crossbite. This before, okay? No orthodontics here. Just orthopedics lower upper. 2 chiropractors, myofascial therapy, and tongue therapy. Look at the change. And her list of medical history was this thick, all related to dysautonomia. And look at that. So I always say crooked body, crooked face, crooked mouth, straight body, straight teeth, straight everything. So let me show you guys Stephen. And he's a big advocate of my work, and this guy had orthodontic retraction, bicuspid extraction, meaning premolars were removed for orthodontic purpose at age 12. And he's in the documentary. You can find it on my page, talking about his symptoms. At age 12, his life started to change. And take a look at his nose. Okay, so where his cranium was locked right at the base of his cranium, right between the 2 eyebrows. And this is him after 3 months. So 10 years between this, 10 years it took him to get to the right treatment. But take a look at the face's structural changes by just orthopedically changing the mouth, okay? Look at his facial thirds changing, the relationship of the ears and mouth. And guys, take a look at the eyes. So how you see that the pupil is dilated, that's fight or flight. Why do you have the pupil dilated? You're in fight or flight. So his entire right side was in fight or flight. But take a look at him. Like you can see the eyes will not lie. And take a look at postural changes. That's when I met him on a Zoom in England. And this is him right after started a treatment, and this is him within a few months of treatment. Take a look at how body comes out of the stuck mode. It's this, extension to neutrality. Neutrality is the key. So these are the things that you guys are possible within months. And I see this all the time. When body is free, it will let the mouth move. Mouth that I showed you guys here, before age 12, body is responsible to form this. So this is free floating. At age 12 to 14, pretty much the body is coming to close the mouth into position. And that's unfortunately when they get into orthodontics, which limits the movement of their face, which is still growing. They take out teeth and restriction, which is, and those of you guys ask me about orthodontics and do I believe in it? Do I like it? You heard my answer. I've had rapid expansion done on my son, and some of the papers that I read today, before the start of this, I told you I've been reading all my papers today, was talking about, they did the study, and when we are putting appliances in the mouth for rapid expansion in the mouth, it actually does translate all of that force more forcefully into the base of the cranium, into the zygomatic arch. So basically, the zygomatic arch and base of the foot right here gets the most amount of stress. The paper's already out there, and these are 2023. So if you ever wonder about it, take a look. Like literally all that restriction in the cranium translated into. So want to know what the appliance looks like in the mouth? That's what they look like. So here's the appliance inserted, and they are removable, so they're not permanently placed in the mouth. Sorry, I'm not very high tech today, and I'm worried this is going to discontinue my connection. So the nose structure will change, but look at the mouth. Sorry, let me go back. Oops. There we go. So look how uneven the mouth is before, and look at how even it is after. And this is what the appliance is. You see how there's islands between there's gap between the islands, and there's a screw channel here, and this axial springs will stimulate the periodontal ligaments and the stem cells, basically the entirety of the dorsal in the mouth. And I design every one of these for my adult patients according to their posture, according to where they need development in their cranium, and it's specialized for them. There's no two people I have ever met, and I've done this for the last 5 years. I haven't touched a drill. That's all I do. I move skull bones. I move eyeballs and ears and mouth. I am yet to see two people that are the same. I'm yet to see that. They have patterns, they have compensations, and then they have pathology, or both. Top to bottom, bottom to top. There's no rhyme or reason. And what I know is when I get more detailed with the patients, when I ask the proper questions, they actually give me the diagnosis. I don't need to look for it. Patients come with their diagnosis in their hand if you ask the right questions. And most of the time, the process is started, if not before birth, right at birth, how they were delivered and how their cranium become distorted. And one of the things that I see is they had nasal breathing issues because they had problem with their moving their neck, so their body was stuck in the sympathetic mode from the get-go, and then they took on 3 other compensations just to get around and stand up, and they never walked. Really though, walking requires proper stimulations, proper orientation of feet, mouth, canines, everything. And if they don't have that, they go into compensation, they stuck there. And when they are stuck in a compensation, they develop with it. Then we see them at age 12 with crooked teeth, Madeline, everything, and trying to level their mouth. But guess who brought the mouth into existence? They didn't have teeth at first, it was the body. Distortion in the body equals distortion in the mouth, crowding, malalignment, midline discrepancy. So many people, you guys, ask about midline discrepancy. When the midline is displaced, this always tells me lower and upper jaw are off. That means body and the skull is off. Neck is always going to be in between the two. And as bipedal species, your airway, your neck posture, the way you hold your head is going to be affected. So there goes your vagal tone, there goes your neurology, and there goes your symptoms in physiology, functionality of your, homeostatic functions, and also, yes, mental state too. So let me see, you have, will Invisalign help with can't? I am not at all into rapid expansions or corrections with orthodontics. You guys ask this a lot, and let me tell you what, not that I'm against Invisalign. It's almost like saying, can I Uber somebody from New York to LA? You could, but you could also put them in a Boeing and then Uber them home. So can Invisalign do what an orthopedic structure need to do? Is it feasible? In my world, no. As a matter of fact, you can only push teeth within the alveolar socket. Let me tell you what that is. Alveolar socket is basically where the teeth are sitting in the bone, okay? Let's see. So we can move teeth within the bone and organize them that way. But we're not able to properly organize the cranial structures by wires and braces. I have so many patients that have had 2 rounds of braces. Just showed you a couple of them here. Actually, practically every patient I showed you here that had at least 2 rounds of braces, if not once. Rapid expansion was done. If all of that was supposed to help, then why are they still in my chair with the same dysfunctions? I shared not too long ago some articles from New England Journal that did a retrospective study on adenoidectomy and tonsillectomy, removing tonsils and adenoids on children to treat apnea. Conclusion? Well, this came up like literally in 2013. It makes no difference to watchful wait or remove them. It's the same effect as far as the apnea is concerned. They did the same study about rapid expansion and came out 2023
they did 20-year retrospective umbrella study about all this rapid expansion that has been done, and not 2 study out of 5 can conclusively say that yes, rapid expansion in fact treated apnea. So they don't recommend that. Literally, the conclusion says we do not recommend rapid maxillary expansion for treatment of apnea. Go look it up. This Brazilian studies out there and came out in 2023. So the more we focus just on the teeth and we forget that body put them there, the more we disregard the body. As we always say, when you're driving on a highway, the signals on the highway would tell you where the cities are. Those are teeth. The cities are there. The signals just tell you where they are. Now, if you take the signal and take the signs and say Denver goes that way, well, Denver is still here. You just changed the sign. So for that very reason, I personally would reserve the right to just resort to Invisalign clear corrections only for dialing the teeth into the proper leveling when your orthopedics is corrected, when the pelvis is aligned, when the spine is aligned as humanly as possible, when the cervical spine has gained its cervical curvature, because without curvature in the cervical spine, how could you dial the mouth? They're 2 ends of the same coin. They're the same. Literally, your mouth and your neck are 2 ends of the same coin. So if your neck is not in organization, if your tailbone and your neck are out of order, can we relapse? Or better yet, you're going to give them a new compensation. To lower crowding of the teeth and kyphosis comment. Yes, there is a paper out there. You can look it up in 2009 paper that has, it was a null hypothesis. So basically they disproved the hypothesis, and they proved that in fact, lower anterior crowding is related to, there's a direct relationship between lower teeth crowding, lower front teeth crowding, and cervical spine pathology and instability. So go look up that paper. It's already there. To answer the question about Invisalign, I see my functional therapist. One side of my tongue touched the roof of my mouth and the other side doesn't. Yeah, you know why? Because your palate is uneven. So if your palate is uneven, look up my story. One of the doctors I coach in Dubai just posted a picture of the patient we treated together. I personally helped her deliver the appliance, and you could see that his entire posture was off, clastering, all other distortions. Palate was uneven, and it's getting even. And that's what I see all the time, is the palate from the get-go. One is up and one is down. And guess what? Mouth is a smaller box inside the bigger box. Big box. Little box. So if your mouth is uneven, guess what else is uneven? Your skull, which is sitting on top of what? Your neck, which is sitting on top of what? Your pelvis. Oh my gosh, so you have an uneven pelvis. Yes. Uneven pelvis will produce, for what reason? That's why they come see me and 3 other doctors in the same room to figure that out. But when your body's uneven, your spine is uneven, everything is uneven. So you can't just say, let's go ahead and level the teeth and forget that we'll get the tongue to go up there. Well, the tongue follows the hyoid. So if you have an uneven shoulder and uneven pelvis, the tongue cannot go there. So we have to address the unevenness in the maxilla, if not before, while we're training the tongue. Not sooner. Hello. I had bilateral open crossbite, narrow palate, and did the Damien system. I'm not familiar with Damien system. Corrected it. The narrow palate came back and did the crossbite. I wonder why. I'm not trying to be facetious here, you guys, but that comment that I just read through had a bilateral open bite, which means when you have a bilateral open bite, it's because the tongue is trying to be. Actually, I might be able to, guys, get my charger in my. Just bear with me. Trying to multitask here. I'm running out of charge and trying to figure that out at the same time. I was so not prepared for this live. So I hope you guys are hanging with me and still getting the best of it. It's so funny. All day I was going to make a post, and then I decided to, here we go. We're back to charging. So, okay. So the question was about, let me just read that again. If I missed it, please let me know. Can you repeat the question? Because I was busy putting my charger in. How to get an appointment with you in the office? Best way to do it, I could tell you to send me a DM, but it takes me forever to get to my DMs. I'm going to, yes, send me a DM and I will forward you my manager's email and she can help you with that. So what was the question about the crossbite? Okay, the crossbite. So when your jaws are off, which pretty much when your body's off, those are off to it, and your teeth are not helping you organize your skull, and guess who does that for you? Your tongue. And you stick your tongue between your teeth to stabilize your neck. That, most of the time, it's not the tongue thrusting, the tongue sticking itself between the teeth that cause the open bite. The malocclusion is there to begin with. The tongue is trying to fill the gap. You following with me? So what happens is when you have an open bite, you don't have a proper occlusion to support your system. That's when things go south, because when we're trying to organize those systems together without taking into consideration the whole ground up properly, the tongue has to compensate in a new position, okay? And when whatever apparatus we put in there to correct the crossbite by just addressing the teeth without addressing what's below the body that controls the teeth, that's when things go back south again, because soft tissue will try to compensate for what neurology has not happened and for what structure has not been put in place. So addressing the neurology, addressing the physiology, and training the cerebellum to cross pattern properly is important. Without both of those two, it's impossible. No, I'm not saying that people are not getting results, but remember, I started this live by saying there's two types of people: dysfunctional, pathological. A dysfunctional person has room to adapt. Let me just explain that means. So imagine if you have millions of dollars or $2 million in the bank, okay? If you make a bad decision and $100,000 is lost, you're not gonna notice it, do you? What if you have no money in the bank and you make a bad decision? Now you're gonna get a call from the bank, right? That's a difference. A pathological condition has no room to adapt versus a dysfunctional does have room to adapt, depending on what genetic card had been handed off, depending on all three legs of the health, because remember, there's a tripod to the health: mental, chemical, physical. So if the other two legs are not doing too bad, if mentally, chemically, hormonally, nutritionally, they're not too bad, orthopedics can suffer and not know any difference. But it's only when the adaptive capacity is not holding up. Remember the water bottle? If the water bottle is halfway empty and is not good quality, you squeeze it and it has nothing to give and it distorts, right? Versus it's good quality bottle and it's mostly full and the cap is half off, it's not fully off. Like they're not completely 100% mouth breathers. Catch my drift. And there's a difference between the one that has something to give and someone that doesn't. So who are the people that get response from almost any treatment? They are the ones that can compensate, and they will compensate. And the one that can't, they have more symptoms than they started with. And they come see me because after 10 years, you saw them. They have every dysautonomia symptomatology under the sun, and everybody's trying to chase those. Let's give them this peptide and that red light therapy and this hyperbaric oxygen, reducing the inflammation. Wait up, guys. Where did the inflammation begin? And until I know that, everything else that I'm doing even is chasing the symptoms. And I hate doing that because body is always ahead. Every time you introduce a new system, a new factor, whether it's an adjustment, an appliance, a myofunctional therapy, or singing kumbaya, your body will be ahead of you trying to pretty much kind of figure it out. So if the patient is pathologically compensated, there's no pattern. When I look at them, there's no pattern. There's no, you push this, the next one is going to get pushed in the domino, right? If the domino is not moving in the proper direction, there's no rhyme and a reason. Those are the patients that are going to have the most difficulty adapting to almost anything, not just my treatment. That's why I always measure and stage my treatments. That's why I work with several different chiropractors, several different specialists to make sure I don't create a new problem that winds them down. And I have those patients. Trust me, I have the most complex people that you could imagine because, this is the world we live in. I mean, nobody looks at patients that deeply. And by the time they get to me and the team I've put together, they've already spent their money. They've been through so many irreversible procedures, but unfortunately, there's no fixing that any day. You can only breathe out of one nostril. When you can only breathe out of one nostril, is because your septum is yielded to one side or another. Where's my septum? Did I lose the septum? Oh no, it's here. Okay. So when the sphenoid is distorted, how do we know if the sphenoid is distorted? If your head is off or your eyes are off and your ears are off, your sphenoid is off. So if this bone that vomer is connected to is distorted, if this bone is off, the vomer is off, So one nostril, because what's connected to the vomer and right here is your nasal aperture and your palatine bone that controls your nasal breathing, and your sinus is connected to that directly. And that's all the back of the palate, where the tongue is supposed to mate with the back of the palate. So if you cannot breathe out of one nostril, that means structurally, from ground up, you basically are able to use your diaphragm, the tongue, the hyoid, everything from that side, or the body of the sphenoid was distorted structurally from the get-go in the middle right here. So if the connection of the sphenoid and occipit's called cranial base of your cranium, is off, it shifts the sphenoid to one side, so one side gets blocked and you only breathe out of one nostril. So if it's pathologically distorted, meaning that cannot all breathe out of one nostril, you depend on one. So right side mostly is sympathetic, left side is parasympathetic. So if you cannot breathe out of the left nostril, that's when we see a lot of patients that are, and I have a right brain child, my daughter, cannot breathe out of the left nostril, dominance in the brain hemispheres. And when the nostrils go into cycling, so when the side that's blocked, the side that is not blocked goes into cycle, that's when you resort to breathing out of the mouth and you get a kind of like foggy brain. You feel like you can't focus until that nostril comes back to function. So how do we fix that? I'm guessing that's what the question is. Yes. Can we use Vivo's appliance to treat? I have seen several times, I've seen movement of the vomer, and I work with a lot of cranial structural specialists that move the palate and the vomer as I structurally organize the mouth. And I showed you guys some of the pictures here, but if you come to the webinar planning, I'll show more of them. We can, in fact, redirect the vomer. But understand, what moves the vomer is airflow. And the airflow is not just from the nose. Where does the air go when it goes from the nose? It goes to the lungs, right? And what directs it? The diaphragm. What directs the diaphragm? The rib cage. How your rib cage moves, how your pelvis moves, all of that is related. What is my opinion about the nasal strips? Love them. Mouth taping, I'm on the border with that. Nasal strips. So my favorites, I love Mute. It's inexpensive, and if you can tolerate it, it's $12 for a pack of 3, and they last you a good month, each one of them. But it takes a minute to get used to it. If you don't know what Mute is, M-U-T-E, it's a dilator. You put it inside your nostrils, and it opens up and keeps the more like the front part of your nose open. It's a bit harsh, and it comes off easily. But if you want to, get a softer version of that, I don't remember what it's called. They have an athletic version of it that you can get, and you can use it during the exercise. Again, it's inexpensive, kind of works for most. Most patients that have septum deviation at the base of closer to the base of the skull, they need more like the tug right here. And my favorite is Intake. Nasal strips, they are not hypoallergenic for the most part, and they come off easily. Intake. And I think the link is on my website. You can look them up, or just go out on Amazon looking for Intake. You put the magnets on the side of the nose, and poof, you put the nasal structure on, or the structure on the strip on top of that. It clicks into the magnets, and it keeps the nose open. I love those. Mouth taping, I am not recommending mouth taping for most. As a matter of fact, it's not even the first thing I do, because if you are not able to properly, chemistry of your brain is not allowing you to breathe properly, taping your mouth is not going to make you a nasal breather, you guys. For nasal breathing, there's so many things that need to be set up. You cannot just tape the mouth and say, nah, you're a nasal breather. Can it force you to change the biochemistry sensitivity of your brain to the CO2? Yes. But if you're structurally not able to do it, if your diaphragm is not able to get the air you need, it's not suggested. I don't suggest it. I'd like to address the root cause, and if I can encourage closing the mouth, I would do it, but taping is not something I suggest. So you can hear me say that. God bless those who do it. If it works for you, it works for you. I don't suggest it. I really think you're addicted. Most people, we are all product of the modern life, so you're not the only one. What do you think of syringomyelinea? Oh, Chiari malformation. Okay. I have a Chiari patient I'm treating, and we're stabilizing him. So what is the specific question about Chiari? Ask, and I will try to be specific answering that. Surgery, I'm not a chiropractor. I'm not a neurologist. I'm not going to comment on that. But as far as Chiari, for those of you who don't know, I just showed the article about the craniocervical instability. The way you have your head sitting on top of your neck, the way you're buckling your head to your neck, via ligaments that are allowing your neck to move based on the information that gets from all your sensory information, eyes, ears, mouth, all of your joints, proprioception, basically moving your head. If either you're structurally distorted, you're posturally compensating, your head is in this position, or you lost the primary curvature in the neck, it will cause those ligaments to get loose. Now, if you already have a genetic deficiency in making good collagen, like a lot of patients with EDS, Alvarez-Download syndrome, or they have a lot of sympathetic overdrive that steals the minerals from their ligaments, and they have loose ligaments to begin with, like double jointed people, you see a lot of increased mobility and range of motion, those ligaments are loose. So what holds your head to your neck are those ligaments and the relationship of the cervical spine to the skull, C0 to C1, C2, and the rest, okay, and tailbone. So the most of patients that have upper cervical instability, their body has been forced to put their head outside of its center of gravity and keep it there for a long time, and they either had predisposition to ligament issues, or they picked it up along the way because they're in the sympathetic overdrive, either or. I've seen both, or combination. And those patients are tough to treat because one thing, and I talked to Dr. Ross Hauser, who's a good friend of mine. He does a lot of treatment of upper cervical instability with prolar injections. The article I showed you guys is from Santana Schultz. They do a lot of those specialty treatments as well for KRI patients. And I have a lot of upper cervical friends, and I talk to them all the time. When the mouth is out of distortion, you cannot address the neck alone. Even you have a Chiari patient, and I do have a Chiari patient actually, and I have radiographic evidence that by treating his mouth, we're actually improving on that too. But I understand it's a pathology. Remember, dysfunction, pathology, that one is a pathology. And let me see if I missed, I'm new here. I have a child with turning 4 and is a mouth breather, yep. But at 4 years old, I would suggest you talk to an SOT chiropractor, craniosacral therapist, and evaluate the tongue and make sure if there's any birth trauma, any distortion in the cranium that may have happened, resolve those. Make sure the child is crawling, their head movements are restored, reflexes are turned on, because reflexes really is what guides the body to move, propel, stand, balance, all that jazz. And if they're not kicked in, cross patterns are not established, the tongue would be dysfunctional, and a dysfunctional tongue would lead to a lot of problems down the road. So for a 4-year-old, if the child's a mouth breather, make sure that there's no nasal obstructions from environmental allergies and things like that. But if a 4-year-old cannot breathe through the nose, I would consult first and foremost to make sure there's no allergies involved, subclinical, even any food allergies, environmental allergies, get that checked first, because a lot of times it's not just mouth breathing, because they're an obligatory mouth breather, but also check and make sure it's not tongue tie. And do occupational therapists are a good resource for you. At 4, you cannot really do much of a myofunctional therapy, and also a good craniosacral therapist to make sure there's no cranial distortions. Hopefully I answered that question for you. Can dysfunctional breathing cause the teeth to shift inward to collapse with a pelvic expansion help? Okay. Teeth will respond to soft tissue dysfunction. So if you are a mouth breather, if your tongue is low postured, if your tongue is not going to the roof of the mouth, the tongue and cheek muscles and lip muscles and all the perioral recruitments, incorrect perioral recruitment, meaning muscles that are your face and tongue are basically suctioning the teeth and moving the teeth around, those forces will basically decide where the teeth will land as a dysfunction. So yes, breathing dysfunction, low tongue posture can lead to those malaligned teeth. But why are those muscles not recruited properly? Because the structure of the bone that carries them are not in the right place. So which one to be addressed first, chicken or the egg? Well, in my world, first I break the occlusion, I get them leveled in the mouth with one appliance, and I work with the structural professionals I work with just to get their bodies into the proper order. And once the body can, in fact, function with the structure and the neurology that works, then I retrain the tongue and my functional stuff. What to do to help her? Are you talking about your daughter? Can dysfunctional breathing cause the teeth? I think I answered that. Your son had was a mouth breather and had expanders at 2 years ago, and also had a deviated septum. Is your son doing better? Is that a statement or a question? You're working with Josh now? Okay, good. Somebody's working with my team, and you've been told that you have Fluid-filled cyst in the spinal cord and a possible Chiari. Okay, the Chiari and craniocervical instability is a huge, huge deal. And yet we still have to address the mouth. It has not prevented me from treating those patients, but it's a co-treatment, and it's a co-treatment. Reversible, oh gosh, I wish I could answer that question for you, but I don't know that Chiari is reversible, but we can stabilize it. Because once the C2 gets stuck in the dents, magnum, so this is what Chiari is. Watch my demos. So here's a C2, here's your C1. I think it's the right orientation. Bear with me here, okay. And here's the base of the skull on top of it, okay. So that's how it is. In the Chiari case, the dents of C2 is impinging on the space of the foramen magnum. So the tonsillars, the brainstem gets stuck in the foramen magnum, which makes it difficult for the fluids, the spinal fluid, to drain from the head, and a lot of neurology gets impacted. And these patients have instability of those ligaments that buckle those three structures together, which means as the structures come loose and bipedal, remember? Standing on 2 feet, they cannot organize their head. With every dimensional changes, the physiology gets impacted as the neurology gets affected. Those patients, they need to have their mouth and cranium stabilized from the other end. So think about the mouth as the connection here. So what I do is, with my appliances, I organize this part as the chiropractors organize this part, creating the space between C1 and occiput. I hope that answer. She snores also. Yeah, snoring is a very complex thing because snoring is a problem with improper exhalation, because the muscles that hold your airway open, they are either too sticky, the lining of the airway, mucosal tissue is too sticky, or the airway is redundant, meaning that the patients are not able to properly exhale against the gravitational, the atmospheric pressure. So the pressure outside and pressure inside causes the gradient, pressure gradient change in our lungs to breathe. Diaphragm is responsible for that. And the air passage from the nose all the way here, the only part that's really susceptible to collapse is right here, the neck, right? The upper cervicals. So the tongue and the hyoid is connected to the one end, and then the base of the cranium is basically holding the fort, the drape from the top down. Base of the cranium, right here. My ethmoid wanted to stay here. This happens all the time. So base of the cranium right here, majority of those airway muscles are hanging from your sphenoid. So if the sphenoid is off, the temporals are off, basically the mouth is uneven. All those muscles are basically uneven, and they collapse when you're breathing out against, because it's really the breathing out is the problem, not the breathing in. So we focus a lot on proper exhalation, and we train the patients from their diaphragm, from their pelvis, from their foot, yes, and all the way to the hyoid, to the tongue, to the maxilla, to the roof. I fix the roof as my professionals from ground up take care of the foot, the pelvis, the diaphragm, rib cage, neck, upper cervical, C0, as we basically manage the entire structure into better alignment. So you use metrics to tell you that you're in the right direction. What are the metrics? Nervous system function, breathing function, end-tidal CO2. All of that comes into account to determine how you breathe in and how you breathe out. Will releasing the pelvic floor have an impact on breathing? Of course it does. Breathing, so think about it. So rib cage and your pelvis opposing each other, okay? So for compressive forces to be created, for diaphragm to move to rib cage, you need the proper orientation of the pelvic floor to the rib cage right here, to the diaphragm. So if they're divergent like that, right, extension, like a pelvis extension, you cannot properly attain that. If you have a posterior tilt, when you have, flat back, tailbone tucked in, for stability purpose, a lot of patients have their sacrum nutated, like locked in. They are not able to properly create that pressure either. So working on the pelvic floor and strengthening the pelvic floor and orientation of the pelvic floor to diaphragm, abdominal muscles to the spine is super important for breathing. As a matter of fact, this is the part of breathing that is not even mentioned, that is not getting enough attention, And everyone that works in the world of airway, they think it's the expansion in the mouth, creating room for the tongue and getting the tongue to the roof of the mouth. Guys, I've treated patients that their airway is, I can drive a truck through the airways that wide. Why do they have problem with breathing? Because it's not just the space, it's the managed space, the collapsibility, it's the neurology, it's the chemistry, it's the structure, mechanics of how it stays open against the outside pressure. And the more compensation patients take when they're standing up, the less they're able to do that here. When you're in this vulnerable position, in a supine position for sleep, that's when they have the most problem with breathing. So a lot of patients think, oh, you're treating apnea. I treat breathing disorder. To be specific, I help the patients exhale better. Exhale, breathing out, whether it's neurology, chemistry, structure, combination, whatever it is that make them hold their breath or breathing faster, all of that is causing the pH change. We focus on that, which is why we go to the source, to the brain, to the nervous system. Breathing it's the most basic movement we do. And if you do it with compensation, it takes down your nervous system. It's literally the NASDAQ of your stock market for your health, practically. So what are the metrics that go into NASDAQ? What are the indices? The thing about nervous system responding to all things reflects into the indices of your health and how you breathe, right? So every breath, if you're breathing 20 breaths a minute, why are you breathing 20 breaths a minute? That's one of the things I want people to pay attention to is how many breaths do you take? 20 breaths a minute? That's sympathetic. Why are you breathing so fast? That's overbreathing. Overbreathing is worse than overeating. Worse, by far. Your nervous system is taxed in a sympathetic nervous system, okay? If you're stuck in a state of sympathetic overwhelmed, your digestion, your homeostasis is all impacted. Nothing good happens when you're stuck in a sympathetic nervous system. Why are you in a sympathetic? That's what I need to find out too, which is why we start them in the pseudomotor machine, which is why we start our patients on evaluation of their nervous system. The first place I go is their nervous system. And then I see down the stream, the breathing, the sleeping, the posture, digestions, labs, biomarkers of inflammation, all of those we can track down. The example I always give is when you have wet floors. I know you have wet floors. I know they're up to your knees, you're wet. Okay, I'm not really interested in vacuuming the water out of there before I know why and where and how many faucets are open that contributes to it. But more importantly, how big is your sink that's overflowing and where the sink is stuck? Because if you don't address those two, if you do not address the blockage in the sink and shut down the faucet, you will never be done mopping. Patients that have all this dysautonomia, dysregulated nervous system symptomatology, from digestion to sleep to mood to fatigue, they're all suffering from the dysregulated nervous system. And when the nervous system is dysregulated, the first marker we check is breath, right? Because if your all is good, why are you breathing 20 breaths a minute? Good question to be asked. And once I have the answer to that question, then I can help that patient. I know it's a winded answer to is closing his mouth. Okay. So if the mouth is open, I would definitely check with the craniosacral therapist and check the functionality of the tongue. Oh, this is moving on me. I wonder now if it has anything to do with inverted feet. Yes, it absolutely does. Structure, again, work with someone, applied kinesiology, craniosacral therapist, that'll be my suggestion. Yes, lack of emotion, which is, like I said, I don't want to open that can of worm right now, but when I say 3 legs to the health, each one of them dysregulated can, in fact, make your body stuck in a sympathetic. When body is not feeling safety, when the brain decides you're not safe, you are in sympathetic or overwhelmed, stuck mode, play dead mode. You're not in vagal tone, ventral vagal to be exact. Rest, digest, social engagement. So what causes that? Is it PTSD? Is it amygdala? As primitive species, we are, in fact, primarily the function of our brain is no different than other animals. So for safety purpose, when we have emotional center, right? We have amygdala, we have our hippocampus. They don't. We have an emotion center that basically keep records of memories of things that happened to us. So if you think about comparing us to another species, let's say deer, grazing, rest and digest, everything is good, and he hears a threat and feels a threat. The senses, the primary senses and proprioception tells the animal that you're in danger. Lack of safety, activate parasympathetic, heart rate goes up, panting, breathing becomes shallow, pupils dilate, all the fight or flight symptoms turn on to run for life. So the animal runs and the other animal chases it. There's only two possibilities that happens. Either it gets to freedom, goes back to digesting and grazing, or it gets caught. There's no third option. If it gets caught, it doesn't go back to ventral vagal, it goes to play dead mode called dorsal vagal. Stuck, right? We, the same, except we're living in this constant state of sympathetic, low-grade sympathetic or dorsal vagal, overwhelmed, stuck, play dead mode. But the tiger never showed up. And our bodies are constantly still thinking, the brain's still thinking, I'm not safe, I'm not safe. And what happens when you're thinking you're not safe? You continue sympathetically breathing, right? Like sitting at the red light with your car revving up at 6,000 RPM. You wonder what's going on with your car. That's the state of humans that are living in the state of constant low-grade sympathetic, full-on dorsal vagal, no rest and digest. No, the amygdala and the hippocampus is responsible for that. And you think about it, most people that I see, their functionality of digestion, rest and digest, all those becomes impacted. And when I put them on a pseudomotor test, a heart check, that's the profile that I get is, and I can look at them and say that that's where they are. Just looking at the history, about 30 minutes into my conversation with them, they literally tell me where and when and how it happened. Sometimes it's at childhood, sometimes it's at birth, you know, a combination of all. But when body has to compensate mentally, chemically, physically, it will be stuck. And when it's stuck, that's all it knows. Then neuroplastically they change. That's all the brain knows. Now trying to get that nervous system to go from stuck zone to rest and digest. You see how it takes a village. But the fact is, until we ask the right question of why they're there, everything else we do is a moot point, which is basically mopping the floors because we don't know where the leak really comes from. And unfortunately, in a lot of functional medicine as well, I've seen nothing against that. I love working in functional medicines, but most of their work is in physiology and chemical part. Supplements, red light therapy, reducing inflammation. They look at HPA, they look at gut, which is great, but those are all down the stream from an overactive sympathetic nervous system. If you don't know if the orthopedic neurology, even the hippocampus, the mental state is properly addressed, you will continue to have to put them on all those meds, and they will continue to break down. Still they're breaking down because what pushed them into that sympathetic overdrive has never been addressed. And until it's addressed, it's not addressed. I mean, it's obvious, right? Your 14-year-old had tonsils and adenoids removed, which I had found just so I know. Well, if that's any consolation, my daughter, right there, that picture on the wall over there, is the reason why I'm doing this. Her picture was the first one I showed, and she was grinding her teeth down to like little nubs when she was 7 years old, and she started getting the front teeth replaced. It was devastating, and nobody was giving me the answer. She's 12 now, and everybody told me to go home till she's 8. And when she was 7 years old and full on ADHD, I was finally sent to a lab test because doing sleep tests the way I do it now was not available. And it was a horrendous and expensive process. Diagnostics is the biggest burden for the children getting diagnostics. And the only thing that would suggest was removing tonsils and adenoids. By the way, the year she was born in 2013, New England Journal published the article that did a retrospective study on all this adenoidectomy and tonsillectomy, and they said watchful waiting equivalent of removing tonsils and adenoids. Amputating the body parts or not doing anything produce the same results. The memo did not get it to the ENT and pulmonologist, sleep physician who suggested a treatment for my daughter. I didn't know any different either. And to this day, I regret it. Adenoids returned, by the way, because the reason for adenoids and tonsils being enlarged was two things. She has, first of all, she was a mouth breather, cranial distortion, which all had to be addressed. You see how her mouth was going in one direction, cranial distortion, and also subclinical allergies. So, goes to show you, when body organs are doing their part, why are we amputating them? Amputation, you know. I'm planning to come see you and Josh. Okay, so make sure you organize that. Traveling from Norway, okay. Make sure that you talk to Jeannie about that. Okay, physical therapist from PRI. Whoever asked the question, I do work with PRI trained folks, but I don't 100% sponsor everything that PRI does. I've seen their patterns are very much stuck in one pattern. And I see a lot of pathological patients that have no pattern, or they have a pattern opposite of what they have. And we had to completely change our ways of treatments. And a lot of times it's a descending major that needs a dentist to treat them. So unfortunately, it's hard to work with professionals that don't see eye to eye. But I do work with a lot of them that are open-minded, and we have evaluated the patient as they are, and we're using a lot of those exercises. So yes, I do support the breathing exercises. I do support the techniques, but I don't support fully that every patient is the right pattern or right BAIC, left BC. So not everyone is stuck on the right foot. As a matter of fact, I have a practice full of patients that have been treated by PRI. Some got worse than get results. And once we treated them with the right pattern in a descending way, put the right appliance in their mouth and corrected their cranium, all the ascending stuff kind of started to clear up because they did not have a right side on their foot. I had to show them how to get on the foot. How? By addressing the cranium, because the cranium was the problem, not the foot. It's a descending major. So again, I'm being completely honest here. Do I love it? I actually did a lot of training with PRI. I just, in my experience, in my hand, a lot of patients that I treated did not have the patterns that they talk about. So if you want to know more about it, DM me and we can definitely discuss that. Salam Azizam, salam. What do you recommend? Symmetry for someone who has 4CL scoliosis. Okay, depending on the scoliosis and the reason for the scoliosis, I have to see the patient to comment further. A lot of scoliosis is coming from scoliosis. You haven't heard me say that term, have you? Since you said that, I have to pull this up because it's a term that I coined a while back, and I thought, hasn't anybody thought about this? Because when you have a crooked skull, we're bound to have a crooked body as well. And a crooked body, there we go. Let me put it in a presentation mode. Okay, so you guys would love to come to the webinar I'm going to teach because I'm going to answer a lot of these questions. Here's your scoliosis. Okay, so you see how the mouth is uneven? Okay, so when you have an uneven skull, okay? When your mouth is uneven like that, when you bite down, one side gets more force, and the forces in the mouth gets transferred to the zygomatic arch, to the temporal bones, to all the sutures, down to the neck, down to the spine. So if you have a contortion in your mouth, unevenness in your mouth, it translates into the spine. We have 33 vertebrae in our spine. We have ideally 32 teeth in our mouth. Do are the same. Mouth and teeth are vertebrae. They're occlusals. The occlusal surfaces of the teeth are like synovial joints, literally. The upper teeth, the cusp, lower teeth, the cusp, upper teeth, the fossa, cusp, fossa. I really think saliva is the synovial joint because the articulation of the teeth is equivalent to the articulation of our feet to the ground, our spine vertebrae. So when you have scoliosis, crooked skull, you're going to have scoliosis, or the other way around. So whether it's a top to bottom or a bottom to top, that's when we do the full evaluation. But when you have a distortion between different segments of the spine, one side has more air than the other, and you have unevenness between the two, that's when I see a lot of times that there's contortions in the orientation of the spine itself because one side does not get compressed and decompressed. It's like if you think about it like a body ball or a basketball, you know, if one side is dented and has no air, you see how it's going to look uneven. So by properly putting air in different parts of the body that needs air, like front to back, top to bottom, and left to right, we can attain and maintain a proper spine structure. But we have to address the structure first. If you have an uneven skull and mouth, we got to address it simultaneously. Have I treated scoliosis? Absolutely. I haven't treated that directly. I have worked with professionals and co-treated scoliosis. No, I'm confused. Crooked spine from orientation of the mouth. The correlation has already been established, and there's so much article. I can source all of that if you guys are interested, because you know how I do all day. See my stack of paper there? That's just one Monday. Because I was born with fully flat feet. Oh yeah, if you have flat feet, we need to work with people that can show you how to get the proper sensation in the foot. Again, is it the structure or function? I always ask that question. And it could be genetic, it could be environmental, epigenetic. But when we have patients with flat foot, the first thing I diagnose, you guys, it's unreal when patients come to see me, sometimes from other states. I put popsicle sticks between their teeth and watch their foot and their posture. Their mouth is the last thing I look at, because the way that you organize your body and your mouth together is everything. It's the first thing I look at. And I call it, it's a foot mouth dysfunction. When you have a structural issue that's basically boiling down to unevenness everywhere, malocclusion, unevenness in your occlusion. I hate to call it bite. I hate this word so much because it's misleading. Bite is where you chomp your teeth together. Like, that's a landing position that's dysfunctional. Proper occlusion and orientation of the upper lower jaw is what guides the body into propelling through space. That's our signaling into how to move our head. Lower and upper jaw guide the body into three-dimensional space. Periodontal ligaments of the teeth are super important for the brain to orient the head, to information that comes from the periodontal ligaments, contact of the molars, canines, incisors, goes straight to the brain, not to the brain stem. All of your other proprioception goes through the brain, not the ones that come from the teeth. It's that important. Think about it. If you have the tiniest little thing between your teeth and you put it down, you will immediately know. Same thing, you put it under your toes, not as much proprioception. Hands, feet, mouth, they have so much proprioception. It's survival. And when teeth are that important, imagine the importance of the periodontal ligaments and orientation of the mouth. Even the smallest amount of change is going to be detrimental to the rest of the system. So you just think you just got a crown, right? Oh, it doesn't fit for a couple of days. You wonder what happened 2 weeks later. Let me tell you what, it's not that the crown just got adjusted. Your body basically readjusted all those sutures and trickled down everything to your tailbone for that one tiny little bit of an occlusion that wasn't fit. Because you know how we do dentistry? We do dentistry in those lounge chairs when the patients are laying down with their feet, because I did a decade of that. I remember just laying down with their feet dingling away from gravity, and then we tap, tap, tap their mouth into bite position. And in that position, when they're not forcing gravity, we just level their head in this position. Okay, that's great. They load their spine, and that's completely different. Like when they stand up, in the dentistry, it's still stuck here. That's not where we walk. We stand here. When the patients get their appliances adjusted, you guys have seen me in videos, I adjust them in the vertical position, literally. I never have the patient sit here. Check the appliance fit in their mouth, because I have to look in their mouth. But when I want to check the leveling and adjusting the acrylic to level their skull, I have to load their spine, because every incremental change that I make in the mouth, it's going to trickle all the way down to their toes. Yeah, it's fascinating. Oh, the webinar. Okay. I'm going to say before end of September, but don't hold me. I will make the announcement. I'll have my publicist announce that as soon as we have it. But I'm planning to have this in a more organized fashion. And as a matter of fact, when you sign up for the webinar, I want to make sure that people, if they want to supply their case, if they want to have, like, we're probably going to have a few cases that with patients' consent we can present, but also you can have your questions ahead of time so that I'm prepared to answer them, or at least bring the information with me so that, and make sure my phone is charged. Yes, oh my God, this is literally an on. Yes, I know. Trust me. You know, it's really interesting, you guys. When I walk in the airport, I'm always like looking at people's feet, and I see how they're positioning their feet. I know where their tailbone is according to their feet, and then I expect to see their mouth to be in a certain way, and I'm like, yep, that their eyes or mouth are matching that. And it's so tempting for me to go tell people that, you know, that you need to level your body, because you're breaking down your body. When you're walking with an uneven everything, your body's doing its best to survive. And in survival, nothing good will happen. No, it's telltale sign that your sacrum is jammed and you can't get first. I'm guessing you were conversing with somebody else. Okay, somebody want to join me? Okay, Laura. Somebody here wanting to join me? Okay. Okay. Laura, do you have any comment? Any question?
Just questions about I'm in the process of getting diagnosed with hypermobility Ehlers-Danlos, and I've got lots of kids with it. So wondering how well your stuff works with it.
Okay,
Your program works with it.
are you a professional?
No, I'm just I'm just educated.
Okay, so Ehlers-Danlos syndrome, if you have been genetically, because I had a patient who said he had a diagnosis loose joints, and apparently there's a genetic, component to it as well. But at the same time, I know because the proprioception from your joints is what helps you propel through space. Okay, literally there is Golgi tendon receptors in your joints that proprioceptively organize your body in 3 dimensions, telling your brain where you are in
Yeah.
3 dimensions, what have you. So if your ligaments are loose, that proprioception is shoddy at best. So the brain organizing itself becomes difficult. You see how the loose ligaments could be the reason for sympathetic overdrive? Because why? Brain needs safety. And if it cannot organize itself, can you imagine a reason why the brain would be a little anxious if you cannot figure out which way is south and which way is north, right? Or was it a sympathetic overdrive that caused the sympathetic
Yes.
overdrive, that ligaments looseness, right? Which one was
Yes.
worse? Chronic
Mhm.
sympathetic overdrive, HPA axis, running on adrenal fatigue. Another thing I read today, which, okay, and I'm thinking I know everything. Guys, I don't know everything. I just read a lot. Like, I wanted to do this live showing you guys what I do on a Monday morning. I mean, literally, I'm reading hundreds of papers, and yet I come down to understanding new things. And then I have to go back to